So much of our personalities are expressed in our voice. And so much of mine is my career. I'm an actor. I'm a public speaker. I use my voice as my part of my value system. And when that's not there, who am I? I started having trouble with my voice actually a long time ago, probably about 5-6 years ago. I noticed that my voice was starting to get higher and that I felt like I had less control over it. I was less confident that it would be there when I needed it. And then 2 years ago, almost to the day, I was on stage for my Alzheimer's event, an event that I created to raise money for Alzheimer's. And it was a big dance party in Nashville. And I was the host and needed to run the show. And I was feeling increasingly anxious. It was 90s country was the theme. And I was decided to go with Cindy Crawford. My hair was like fabulous. I had the freckle. I had the outfit. I waltzed out there. The crowd was going wild. And it was my turn to speak. I put the mic up to my mouth. And nothing came out. Literally, like nothing, not even air. It was just like shut down. And it was terrifying. The whole place went quiet, and Ashley, my sister, turned to me and she said, "Did you just lose your voice?" And I said, "Yeah." And we kind of laughed it off at the time, like, oh, she was screaming backstage. But the truth is it didn't come back the next day. And the day after that, it was maybe a little bit better, but it just sounded really whispery and high and weak. And for a couple months, I didn't even know that I could see a doctor for something like that. I just thought, oh, I need hot tea. I tried vocal rest. I kind of hid. Almost immediately, I started working with a voice coach who did a lot of exercises, and he helped me with like relaxation, and because I went right away to like, oh, it's something I'm doing wrong. I'm not breathing properly. I'm not relying on my vocal training, so I was kind of like right away sort of beating myself up. And so he worked with me on trying to just relax and get in my body. And I had 2 movies coming out the following January and February. And it was really at the red carpet for this movie called Doggone, Netflix movie, that I realized like the red carpet was so loud. And I tried doing interviews and I had no vocal capacity when there was noise. And I just realized something is really, it's not there. It was terrifying. I went into the bathroom and cried, and I had a couple of my dear friends there who just like held my hand in the ladies' room, and I just thought, I don't want to go back out there. There was so much shame involved, really. It was just, what's wrong with her? I sounded weak. And it's not how I felt. I felt like I did a great job in this movie, and I feel like, my acting is better than it's ever been in so many ways. I feel like I know myself better in so many ways. I want to age into myself, and now I sound like this. And I don't sound the way I feel. It was in January, really, that I went to Vanderbilt, the Vanderbilt Voice Center, and that was terrific. Right away, they said, okay, and the first diagnosis I got was muscle tension dysphonia. And they said, you are not alone. We are in Nashville. We have tons of mostly singers here who deal with this. It's very common. So muscle tension dysphonia basically means that my muscles around my vocal cords were tensing up in a panic to try to help my vocal cords hit each other. And that was for a long time how I was able to get sound out, is just by the tension. But the problem was, by the time I got on stage at the Alzheimer's event, it was so tight that almost no air could get out. So the first thing they tried to do was unlock the muscle tension dysphonia. And at the time, I was so tight that they couldn't even see my vocal cords when they did a scope. So they really couldn't tell what was happening yet. Vanderbilt sent me to a woman named Erica Young, who's fantastic, who works with a lot of voice patients, and she worked with me on trying to get my body to unlock, and ultimately sent me to a place called the Postural Restoration Institute in Lincoln, Nebraska. Really random. But there's a guy there named Ron Hruska who created the Postural Restoration Institute. It's a fantastic place, and they showed me that my body was not like rooted on the ground, that basically my center of gravity was misplaced. They did these tests to see if like my arm would go down. I was lying flat on a table, and there's a test to see if my arm goes down, to check my hip flexors, how loose they are. I was very tight when I lay down on the table. Then he stuck these popsicle sticks in my mouth, and literally 30 seconds later, my whole body unlocked. And it was just the beginning of me understanding, like, okay, this is what I have to do to ground myself better. And once I was grounding myself better, then my throat and my muscles here were able to relax. They sent me to a dentist in Lincoln, Nebraska. I went there several times. I went to a dentist there. I tried Invisalign braces where they kind of just realigned my jaw. And then they gave me an appliance to wear at night that just helped calm my nervous system. Because when my nervous system was, when I was not relaxing because my body was seizing up, then nothing was calm, So it helped just ground me, center my nervous system. And once I did that, then finally all the therapies that I'd been doing from the muscle tension dysphonia started relaxing. And then I went back almost a year later to Vanderbilt from the first time that I saw them. And they said, okay, now we did the scope and the muscles had relaxed, and then they could see the vocal cords. And they said, okay, so you have paralysis on one side, probably caused by a virus, but we'll never know. They did do a CAT scan just to rule out any sinister things that might have caused something like that, and ultimately said it doesn't really matter what caused it, but it was probably a virus or a series of viruses that's just built up over time, and it's nerve weakness in your recurrent laryngeal nerve, which caused partial paralysis in my vocal cords. And once I got that diagnosis, I felt like my whole body could relax in a whole new way because the shame and the blame dissipated. Because I felt like, okay, this is largely a technical issue. It's not something that I did wrong. Really what happened was my body was trying to help the technical issue. So my body had been compensating, and it was a vicious cycle. And once that piece of the puzzle was figured out, the cycle could stop and I could relax a little bit. So one of the things that happened was we were invited to the governor's ball. And Brad told me that. And normally I would think that would be very exciting to go to the White House and be a part of a black tie event where, people from both sides of the aisle are going to come together, and it's with all the governors in the state. And, we're sitting at the head table, and I just thought, oh no, how am I going to get through this night? And I made cards, I'm on vocal rest. I made cards that were like, so what do you do? Or, so where are you from? So I could show to people to try to create conversation. Because again, I'm a very social person. This would be a fascinating place for me to be. And I dreaded it for weeks leading up to it. And Brad was like, it's going to be fine. I got you. Just wear a sign. Just hand out signs to people. Just make it funny, I show up, and we went into the photo line to say hi to the president and the first lady, and Brad's ready to just say, she's not sick. That's what we were worried about, is everyone's going to go, oh no. And we walk into the room to meet President Biden and the first lady. And the first lady comes to me and she says, I'm so sorry, I've lost my voice. I was like, what? I've lost my voice. And it was such a relief to be like, okay, I'm not the only one. And she has to talk a lot more than I do. And I got through that night. If anyone out there is going through something like this, you're not alone. There was no option but to be awake for the surgery. But to me, that was beautifully symbolic, because over the last 2 years, I feel like I've been waking up to myself. I've had to like go through this with my eyes open. There's no sweeping anything under the rug. It was like, let's look in every corner and figure out what this is. I was trying everything. I was just digging really deep. And to me, the beauty of having to be awake for the surgery, there is no sleeping through this. Like, I have to be fully present to cross this finish line. And I was really ready for it. I was excited. There was no part of me that didn't want to do it. What they did is they made an implant in the room. It looks a little bit like a tooth. And then they placed it in, and then they took it out, they shaved it a little bit, placed it in. They did it about 3 times, and each time they put it in, they'd have me talk. That's why they needed me to be awake. Have me talk a little bit, and they could tell in the room even better than I could. So I started talking, and they said, okay, that's not quite right. Then they did it again. Okay, great, better, but not quite right. Then they did it again. When they finally got it right, everyone in the room said, yes, there it is. There's her voice. It felt great. It was a little bit hoarse at first, but it felt great to just be able to have tone again. And it was wonderful. And when I got back to the room, I had some visitors. I had people coming to see me right away. And it was just like, I couldn't even believe it was true. And then when everyone left that night, I had to spend the night in the hospital. That's when I decided I'm going to write about this. I'm going to tell people about this, because I felt it was really hard to do when I didn't have my voice still. It was really hard to do. And I admire anyone who's able to talk about the hard parts when they're still really, really in the hard parts. But once I crossed into like, okay, I can hear it again, I really wanted to talk about it. And I sat there for like 3-4 hours. I took one shot of myself. I didn't touch it up. I had a pimple on my face. I didn't fix my hair. And I just was like, this is me. And I can't wait to tell you about what I'm going through. It just felt really good to be vulnerable. And the response that I got was so huge and so instant that it really reinforced how much people are wanting authenticity and vulnerability and humor. I think people are really craving that right now. It's a new voice in some ways. I'm sort of having to relearn how to put everything together now that there's new tissue in there, new material in there. And my amazing voice therapy coach, she's a doctor, Jenny Muckala at Vanderbilt. She was helping me with it's a mental job and it's a physical job of just having the security to know my voice is going to be there, because for so long it wasn't. And then having the physical, like, yes, it's there. So she said one thing that she's seen people do is put a bucket over their head to help them. It's sort of like singing in the shower. It helps you hear your voice, and it gives you feedback to know it's there, so you don't have to tense up. So if I am afraid that my voice isn't going to be there, I may be inclined to go back to old habits. And she said, well, do you have a bucket? And I said, I have a swan. So when I hold the swan up like this, I speak into the swan and I can hear my voice. And I'm, okay. And then I can just relax. I know she's there. Swan. Okay. Her name is Swan. So when I got Farmer Wants a Wife, I took Swan. And everyone was like, what's the story? And I just said, she's my support animal. She just comes along. They're like, okay. She keeps the swan for some reason. And then before I'd go out in front of the camera, I'd just say, hey, we got this. I am someone that tries to find the silver lining no matter what. So I'm like my own best and worst cheerleader. So there were days when I really grieved. There are days when I sobbed to the people on my team. Well, to Brad, to my voice coach, to Erica Young, to the people at Vanderbilt, just cried and cried and cried. And they just listened in great ways. And then there were days where I was like, all right, I'm going to be a writer. My son's learning sign language. Okay, I will work on sign language. I will try to embrace this. And you know, Erica and I were working so much on unlocking my body, and once my body was more open and more aligned, I didn't have to do the physical therapy stuff with her as much. So she started doing weight training with me, which is one of the huge perks of this whole thing in the last 2 years, is that I'm finally lifting weights and my low back pain is gone. You know, so like I feel like I have a new lease on life because I have this regular meditation practice, so my mental health is better. And I have a great therapist, and I can lift more than my own body weight, you know, and that feels right. That feels strong and empowering. And for so long, I felt weak, and now I feel much stronger. This was a very isolating experience, and I am just so grateful that I had Brad and the boys with me through this, because they saw me at my most vulnerable and my weakest moments. And to see them embracing me and helping me and grieving with me made me feel less alone, and was really, really helpful for the journey. One of the kindest things Brad did for me was he got me a megaphone. And it was really like hilarious and so necessary. So, you know, he's so good at helping me keeping me laughing. And that was really a gift. It was exactly what I needed. It was this big pink megaphone, and I started using it immediately because, you know, I have teenagers. And I couldn't call them upstairs to say you're late for school, you know? So I got the megaphone there, and it really came in handy. You know what's funny is my youngest was going through puberty while I was going through this. So we were both talking about how our voices were changing. And that was actually really nice to share. It's like, yeah, this is so weird. You feel like a different person, and so do I. And whoa, you're showing up differently in the world, and so am I, and isn't this curious? I wanted also them to see that I was accepting of myself, and also that I'm not giving up. So there were things that I was modeling that they were watching me model, and then I could see them doing the same. I want to never take it for granted. I want to be brave in using my voice and not leave things unsaid. I think that my opinion is valuable. You know, there can be times if somebody else is louder in a room that I'll defer and say, okay, well, that's fine. I'm much more ready and willing to say, hang on, I've got something to say. I have an opinion about this. I have had to fight even harder to be heard. And so now I feel like no matter what my physical voice is, my voice underneath it is stronger.